What's the most bizarre compliment you've ever received? 1. I was at a small get-together with some friends a few months ago, and we were all just hanging out, chatting, and having a good time. Conversation was flowing, people were laughing, and it was the usual friendly vibe. Until one of my friend's acquaintances, someone I had never met before, leaned in and gave me a compliment that completely threw me off. Out of nowhere, he looked at me and said, "You have the most perfectly symmetrical earlobes I've ever seen. They're like tiny, flawless little sculptures." I blinked, confused, and laughed awkwardly. I had no idea how to respond to that. First of all, I wasn't even aware that earlobes could be a source of fascination. And secondly, I'm pretty sure no one has ever noticed my earlobes before, let alone admired them. He wasn't joking either. He was completely serious. He started explaining how rare it was for earlobes to be perfectly symmetrical, and how it's actually a sign of good health, apparently. Felt like I was getting a lecture on the virtues of earlobes, and I just couldn't keep it together. I didn't know whether to thank him, say something about how I've worked hard on perfecting my earlobe symmetry, or just walk away to process what had just happened. Eventually, I just went with a polite thanks and moved on to another conversation, but I'll never forget that moment. That compliment has definitely been the most bizarre and, oddly, the most memorable one I've ever received. 2. I was at a friend's birthday party a while back, enjoying the evening, when one of the guests, who I had never met before, came up to me. He was a little tipsy, and I could tell he was trying to be charming, but he was definitely a bit offbeat. He leaned in close and said, "You have the eyes of a person who could sell ice to an Eskimo." Paused, not really sure how to process that. I mean, what does that even mean? Did he think I looked persuasive? Was it a compliment about my sales potential? Or was it just some strange metaphor that didn't make sense at all? I stared at him for a few seconds, trying to understand. Thanks," I replied, a little unsure if I should be flattered or concerned, but he wasn't done. He then added, "And the way you stand, it's like you could convince an entire army of ants to follow you into battle. Seriously, that posture? It's commanding. I can see you leading a revolution." At that point, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I just burst out laughing. I mean, what kind of compliment is that? "Thanks for thinking I could lead a revolution," I said, still trying to get my head around the whole situation. He grinned like he had just given the most profound compliment in the world and moved on to someone else, leaving me standing there in complete disbelief. I mean, sure, I've gotten some odd compliments in my time, but this one was on a whole other level. To this day, I don't know if he was serious, joking, or if he had some bizarre idea of what makes a good compliment, but I'll forever remember it as one of the most confusing and definitely one of the weirdest compliments I've ever received. 3. I was at a small get-together with some old friends, having a low-key evening with drinks and snacks. Everything was going fine, people were laughing, and the usual catch-up conversations were happening. But then, one of my friend's cousins, who I had only met a couple of times, came over to talk to me. He was a little awkward, but seemed friendly enough. He started asking me about my job, what I had been up to lately, and then out of nowhere, he said, "You know, you have the kind of face that looks like it's been sculpted by an ancient god. Like, if you were alive 2,000 years ago, you'd definitely be a statue in a museum." I had no idea if he was joking, being overly kind, or just truly seeing me in some weird mythical light. By the time the conversation moved on, I was left standing there with the thought, how do you even respond to something like that? I mean, I've had compliments before, but sculpted by an ancient god? That one was definitely a first. I'll never forget that moment. Just one of those weird, unexpected compliments that catches you totally off guard and leaves you unsure whether to thank the person or call them out on their absurdity.